This is a story not just of survival, but of a courage that transcends species. In the heart of the wild, a desperate cry for help echoed across the savannah, a primal plea from a mother who had lost all hope. It took one woman's heart and an impossible choice to rewrite an ancient law of nature. The sun stood high, hanging directly over the Ol Pejeta Conservancy, pouring a brilliant, intense light onto the vast savanna grasslands. The heat shimmered up from the dry ground, creating a hazy mirage on the horizon. The acacia trees stood silent, their shadows shrinking, becoming small oases of cool shade in the sun-drenched land. The scenery was still beautiful, but it was a beauty with a raw, fierce edge of a midday African day. Zebras sought the shade, occasionally flicking their tails to shoo away small flies. Giraffes moved with a slow, rhythmic grace, occasionally pausing to look up. On the edge of a dense thicket, where the lush vegetation met a deserted asphalt road, lived a family of western lowland gorillas. Among them, a mother gorilla, her face serious but her eyes full of affection, watched over her child. The young gorilla, a mischievous infant just entering his first year of life, was the center of the troop's attention. The scorching sun did not dampen his playful spirit. He played with a large leaf, then used his small hands to dig in the dirt. It was a peaceful midday, filled with the soft calls of the gorillas and the ceaseless hum of insects. The seemingly unshakable tranquility of nature was, however, the perfect camouflage for a lurking danger. Captivated by a large grasshopper hopping on the ground, the young gorilla chased it, gradually moving away from his mother's protective embrace. The grasshopper led him to a patch of dry, shoulder-high grass right by the edge of the asphalt road, a place that seemed utterly harmless. Hidden within that grass was a predator of the African wilderness, a massive rock python. It had been lying there motionless for hours, its coiled body a perfect camouflage of earthen gray scales under the midday sun. This spot was its hunting territory, an area it guarded with primal instinct. The small gorilla, his eyes focused only on his new plaything, was completely oblivious. He toddled closer, his tiny hands reaching out, his world nothing more than the simple midday game of chase. Then, with the speed of a lightning strike, the python lunged out. Its immense, muscular body was a blur of motion. In an instant, it had the tiny gorilla in its coils, its power instantly squeezing the air from the small body. A shriek, sharp and full of agony, tore through the midday stillness. It was a sound of pure terror that instantly snapped the mother gorilla back to a state of hyper-awareness. Her heart seized her chest. She saw the flash of the snake's scales and heard her child's desperate, choked cries. Like an arrow, she charged forward, her powerful arms pounding on the dry ground. She reached the scene to see the snake's coils already tightening, its ancient power suffocating her son. She grabbed at the snake's body, pulling with all her might, but it was like trying to move a living mountain. The python was a cold, relentless survival machine. The mother roared, a guttural sound of fury and despair that echoed across the savannah. But her strength was nothing against the python's merciless squeeze. The young gorilla's weak struggles ceased, his choked whimpers fading away. She saw the terror in his eyes, his small hands grasping uselessly at the constricting coils. In that moment, a mother's worst fear became her most horrific reality. The mother gorilla's desperate fight was a losing battle. The python's grip only tightened, a silent, deadly promise of an end she could not bear. Her own muscles were weary, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but the python was an unyielding force. She looked into her son's eyes one last time, seeing his life flicker and fade. A new, terrifying thought pierced through her panic. She could not win this fight alone. In a split second, agonizing decision born of pure, primal instinct, she let go of the python. She turned and ran, not away from her child, but toward the empty road. She took a deep, desperate breath and let out a series of frantic, high-pitched cries. She ran to the middle of the asphalt, a dark, desperate figure under the blazing sun. waving her arms, her eyes wide with a plea that transcended all language barriers. She was pleading with the empty road, a wild mother, gambling everything on a slim chance that a new kind of power might be out there. Just as her hope began to falter, a faint sound grew louder in the distance. The low hum of a truck engine. A red pickup truck, its engine a steady rhythm, was making its way down the winding road. Inside, a woman in her early 30s named Amelia was driving home. She was an ecologist at the Conservancy, her mind filled with mundane thoughts of work and the oppressive midday heat. But as she approached a bend, she saw a sight that stopped her cold. A gorilla, a magnificent, powerful female, was standing in the middle of the road. Amelia's heart hammered in her chest. This was highly unusual. The gorilla wasn't aggressive. She was frantic. Her arms were waving, and she was letting out a series of desperate vocalizations Amelia had never heard before. There was a raw, undeniable terror in the animal's eyes. Amelia instinctively slowed the truck, her foot easing off the accelerator. The gorilla didn't back away. Instead, she fixed her gaze on the truck, her plea so clear, so desperate, that it was impossible to ignore. Amelia's heart, a vessel of empathy for the natural world she had dedicated her life to, made a decision without conscious thought. She stopped the car, her mind a whirlwind of confusion, but her instincts guiding her. She was a professional who knew the dangers of approaching a wild animal. But the mother's distress was too profound to be in normal territorial display. This was a cry for help. Amelia stepped out of her truck, her pulse racing, but her movements calm and deliberate. The gorilla mother, seeing that she had an ally, let out a low grunt and then ran back to the spot where she had left her child. Amelia, her curiosity now a profound sense of urgency, followed. The mother stopped at the edge of the tall grass, her eyes fixed on the sight of unimaginable horror. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The python was a terrifying sight, its immense, scaled body completely wrapped around the small gorilla. The little one's eyes were open, wide with silent panic, his tiny chest barely moving. The snake's head was a terrifyingly calm, focused presence. Amelia knew she had to act. Hesitation could be a death sentence. She spotted a fallen branch nearby and, without thinking, grabbed it. She cautiously approached the python, using the branch to try and pry at the unyielding coils. The snake, however, was in no mood to be disturbed. It whipped its head around, a terrifying hiss escaping from its throat, and struck at the branch with furious speed. Amelia instinctively recoiled, the sheer power and aggression of the predator a sobering reality. The branch was useless. The python was too strong, too fast, too deeply entrenched in its primal purpose. A wave of despair washed over her. She couldn't use her hands. The branch was too weak. She looked at the mother gorilla, who was watching from the sidelines, a silent statue of fear and hope. The little gorilla's struggles had all but ceased. His tiny body was still a tragic, limp form in the powerful coils. Then a sudden, powerful memory surfaced. In the bed of her truck, next to her spare tire and toolkit, was a fire extinguisher. A small, simple device, but it was a weapon. It was cold, it was loud, and it was exactly what she needed. Amelia scrambled back to her truck, her movements a blur of panic and adrenaline. She grabbed the extinguisher, pulled the pin, and rushed back. She approached the python one more time, but this time with a new kind of confidence. With a steady hand and a heart hammering against her ribs, she aimed the nozzle directly at the python's head. She squeezed the trigger, a loud, sharp hiss, not of the snake, but of pressurized gas, erupted from the extinguisher. A plume of white powder blasted onto the python's face. The snake, a creature of cold blood and sensory precision, was completely disoriented. It was a surprise attack it hadn't expected. The sudden cold, the loud noise, and the strange, stinging powder were too much. It recoiled violently, its powerful coils suddenly slackening. The snake, desperate to escape this new, unnatural threat, released its grip entirely and slithered with surprising speed into the safety of the tall grass. The moment the python released its hold, Amelia rushed forward. The little gorilla lay motionless, his tiny body a mix of limpness and the faint, barely perceptible heaving of his chest. He was breathing, but just barely. The mother gorilla cautiously approached, her large eyes fixed on her child and on Amelia, a silent question in her gaze. Amelia, without a word, scooped up the baby gorilla, his small body feeling impossibly light in her arms. She looked at the mother, her voice a soft, soothing whisper. "I'm going to help him," she said, though she knew the animal couldn't understand the words. The mother seemed to understand the intent. Her fear had been replaced by a fragile, new trust. Amelia gently placed the baby gorilla on the passenger seat of her truck, his small form a poignant testament to the fragility of life. She drove with a focused urgency to the Conservancy's veterinary center, her hands tight on the wheel. The vets, a team of dedicated professionals, were ready and waiting. They worked with quiet efficiency, administering oxygen, checking for internal injuries, and treating the ligature marks left by the snake. For a while, it was touch and go, a tense battle between life and death. But the young gorilla, a true fighter, held on. Day by day, he grew stronger. A few weeks later, while working in her office, Amelia received a phone call. It was the Conservancy's vet with joyful news. The baby gorilla had made a full recovery and was ready to be released back into the wild. "We thought you should be there," the vet said. "You're a part of this story." Amelia immediately drove to a reintroduction station at the Conservancy, a quiet, carefully protected area bordering the natural forest. This was the meeting point for the young gorilla to be reunited with his family. As the mother gorilla and her troop slowly emerged from the woods, her eyes immediately locked on her child. The reunion was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. The mother embraced her son with a gentle ferocity, her heart surely overflowing with the relief of a miracle. But then, the mother gorilla looked up. Her eyes met Amelia's across the clearing. There was a pause, a moment of profound, wordless communication. In her gaze, there was no fear, no hostility. There was only a deep, abiding gratitude, a silent thank you that Amelia would carry with her for the rest of her life. Amelia got back in her truck, a quiet smile on her face. She drove away from the area, a simple ecologist who had dedicated her life to preserving this wild world. But in one midday, she had become something more. She had become an unexpected hero, a vessel of compassion that had bridged the impossible gap between two very different species. The midday phone call had transformed her ordinary workday into a sacred journey. It was a reminder that some of the greatest miracles don't happen on a grand stage, but on a quiet, lonely road where a mother's desperate plea was met by a stranger's profound act of kindness.